talking to you. Today in our Integumentary system series, we're going to talk about epidermis in part 2. Okay, so the epidermis is made up of stratified squamous keratinized cell. Now, don't have a large word freak out about this. Let's take that apart. Stratified means that it has layers, okay, and you can see a nice picture of this here, all these different layers going up through. Squamous just means the shape of the cells. They tend to be, on the top of it, tend to be very flat and disc-shaped. And keratinized means that most of the cells, by the time they get to the top, have a protein in them called keratin. The epidermis is avascular, which means there's no blood vessels. That's why probably when you were a little kid, you might have taken like a pin or a needle or something and just put it through the very tip-top layers of your skin, and it didn't bleed and it didn't hurt too much. Probably depends on how gentle you were, though. But the epidermis is avascular. And oh my gosh, does it have functions? It conserves water, which is great because it gives us a little waterproofing there. It helps prevent against mechanical injury, like when you smash your thumb or something. And it also is a big, huge barrier to micro critters. So there are several layers to the epidermis. And here's a nice picture of all those different layers. You're going to be responsible for this diagram on your test. So you might want to stop the video and fill this in. First layer, we're going to start from the innermost layer. That's the stratum basale, also called the stratum germinativum. And you should put those equal in your brain. Stratum basale, stratum germinativum should be equal so that I use them interchangeably and you should be able to understand them interchangeably. Stratum always means layer, okay? And then basale means base, and germinativum means that's the germinal layer. That's where the cells grow from. So either one of those is correct for the bottommost layer. So in this sample of cells, all this light pink stuff underneath here, that's actually the dermis. So the first layer of cells where you can actually see little square kinds of cells, that's the stratum basale. It's the very bottommost layer of the epidermis. The cells there, rather than being flat like they are at the top of the epidermis, they're very cuboidal shaped, cube shaped, and they're fed by the blood that is all throughout the epidermis. So these cells are very happy. They have a good food supply, lots of oxygen. When you have lots of food and oxygen in your cell, you want to divide. So there's a lot of active cell division going on there and cell growth. So lots and lots of stuff. Usually when you're looking at a slide of the stratum basale, you can recognize it pretty easily because those cells usually are the darkest because they're in the process of dividing or they have just divided. So as these cells divide, they push up the cells above them and they gradually make their way to the surface, getting further and further from the food and oxygen supply as they go. So they also have these things in there called melanocytes, and melanocytes have one job, and that's to make melanin. Melanin is that pigment that for Caucasian people, when they go out in the sun, most of them, if you're not a redhead, will tan, and it's because these little melanocytes, when in response to ultraviolet light, want to protect the nuclei of their cell by making a little umbrella out of this chemical called melanin. It also has something called keratinocytes, and these cells make keratin, which eventually, as the cells die, it becomes hardened, and it also gives waterproofing to the body. So all of those are kind of hanging out in the stratum basale layer. On top of the stratum basale layer, we have the stratum spinosum, and the reason that it's called spinosum is because it looks kind of spiny. The cells are starting, they're a little further away from the food supply, they're not being regularly fed, and so they're starting to, the cells, the cell membranes are starting to break down because these cells are beginning to die. And they look all spiny. And you can see right along here and here that they have like these little spiny things. And what those are, they're actually the connections between one cell and the next. The space in between those connections has eroded away because the cell is dying, but those little connections kind of hang on for an extra long period of time. So that's the stratum spinosum. That layer is on top of the stratum basale. The next layer up is something called the stratum granulosum, and it looks like granular, like sugar. Table sugar is granular looking, and the proteins in these cells, because again they're even further away from the food supply, have really, they are pretty much dead, and the proteins are starting to break down. So we have some stratum granulosum here. You can see like the cell doesn't even really look like the cell anymore. It's just kind of like this dust that's in there. So that one's over the stratum spinosum. The cells are definitely breaking up, and they look kind of grainy or granular-like. The next layer up is only found in thick skin. It's called the stratum lucidum. Lucid means clear, for those of you who don't know that word. So this layer is the clear layer. It's clear looking, and it's, you can see where this arrow is here. All of this is stratum lucidum. And the reason that only thick skin has this is thick skin is found on your palms of your hands and the soles of your feet, and that's the skin that gets worn away most often or most frequently. So we got to have a few extra layers there. So if you happen to see a stratum lucidum layer, that means that that sample, that microscope slide was from a sample of skin from either a hand or the palmar side of the hand or the bottom of the foot. So, oh, look at that. There was little animation action going on there. Woo, let's see if we can do it again. Woo, all right, you ready? Here we go. Wow, there it is. Woo, whew, that was exciting. So it's clear looking. It's on top of the stratum granulosum, only found in thick skin on the palms of your hands and the soles of your feet. Nowhere else in your body are you going to find the stratum lucidum. The last layer is a stratum corneum. This is the one that's on the top. It's the very tip-top layer, and it doesn't even really look like a layer. As you can see, these cells are just barely hanging on to each other. They're completely dead, very flat looking, lots of space, kind of flaky looking, because the cells are really completely 100% dead, and it's just the keratin that's inside of them that's kind of left there. Very flaky looking. These are the cells that are constantly being shed. As you go about your day and you pick things up and put things down, every time you touch a surface, you're constantly shedding these stratum corneum cells. So they have to be replaced from all the way down at the bottom where our stratum basale started. So normally, the rate of cell loss is equal to the rate of cell division, not or cell division, the rate of cell division. So in normal situations, those two things are pretty tightly balanced. So if you rub your skin or you press it, like if you're using a tool, or probably, I don't know if you guys still have this, but when I was your age and I was doing a lot of writing because we didn't have computers then, I got a writing callus. So that's because my pencil was constantly being pushed against that spot. And so that's when the rate of cell division is greater than the cell loss. So you end up with a callus, which is just a thickened area of growth in that place. Sometimes you get a little more beefy response there, you get something called a corn. These are usually on your foot. And it's just a conical mass of keratinized cells on your toe or your foot. Very, very painful because usually they go down into your toe, and they usually press on a nerve. And the reason that you get them is because there's something that's pressing on that particular place. Real deal professional ballerinas have corns and calluses all over their feet. They look absolutely gorgeous when they're dancing on stage, but every time you see a gorgeous ballerina doing her thing, looking beautiful, think that chick's got ugly feet or that guy has ugly feet. Okay, well, on that note, thanks for joining me. Have a great day.